Hello, everybody. This is Chris Schmidt with Rocket Lasso Live. This is a Patreon-supported live stream that we do. That we just take questions and attempt to answer them from people in the audience about Cinema 4D and different motion design and maybe some Photoshop. Who knows? It's really fun, and we never know what's going to happen next. So we've already got some people in the chat. They are starting to post questions, and I think we're officially ready to just get going on this. So why don't we go ahead and switch out? Yeah, we'll switch the screen immediately over, and let's go ahead and click on the first link. We've got one from Fried. It's a link to Instagram, and what do we got here? All right. First of all, this is from Oscar Pedersen. I believe it's Oscar Pedersen. And let's see what we got. Ooh. Oh, nice. Okay, so we got first of all, a looping animation. So those are always fun. A lot of stuff when you make a short video for Twitter or Instagram, it's always kind of fun to make it in kind of a GIF format where you can loop it so it starts the same way it ends. This one in particular, there's thematically, there's quite a few of this kind of style. It's like a specific cool style that people have been making where you do a loop, and even where it's something like a sphere is traveling a particular path and it gets back to the start position. What I don't want to do is just recreate what they have here. So I'm trying to think. Give me a split second to just give this a little bit of thought. How can we kind of take some of the ideas here and make it our own? So it does do one nice little rotation as a cube, and so we could, I mean, it's going to be approximately the same, but we could do something a little bit different where it's like a pyramid shape. And it doesn't have to do this perfect roll here. It could like jump into the air or something. So we'll just kind of wing it and try and make it a little bit different as we go. But this is a really good example of this kind of looping animation. So why don't we go ahead right away and jump on into Cinema 4D R20 and look at what we're starting out with. Now, what I'm thinking is that we want to start with some other shape rather than just a cube. Although a cube and a sphere, like those are natural kind of opposites to each other. But we can start with something maybe like a pyramid here. So you see we got a pyramid, and it's nice and square. It's 200 on every direction, even though the sides are different lengths. Like this side is longer than 200, but it ends up being 200 tall. So something to keep in mind there. But one of the things here is that it's really easy to turn something into a sphere in Cinema 4D. It's pretty hard to turn them into other shapes. So we're going to start with the other shape right here and then turn it into a sphere. And we're going to do that by, first of all, I'm going to hit the shortcut NB so you can see the polygons here. And I'm going to subdivide this a bunch of times. So let's subdivide. And we're not actually doing any dynamics here, so we can actually go decently high in this poly count and not worry too much. So there we go. And now, unfortunately, the sides are all triangles and the bottom is quads. I don't think that's going to be too much of a problem, but it's just something to keep in mind. So we've got this pyramid, and we can go and very, very simply, we can make a spherify deformer, and we can put that inside of the pyramid. And if we set the strength up to 100, then boom, we have now converted it into a sphere. Now the radius is a little big, and I set the radius down to 100, so that should be pretty similar. So we can change this radius. You see that's approximately the same volume. You'll also see that depending on where we put this spherify, we need to move it to change our poly count in various areas. You'll see that we have a very high poly density down here in the bottom where these are connecting, and then this flat bottom with all the quads is fine. But if we take our spherify and we pull it to a slightly different position, you can see that hopefully we can put it in more of a middle ground here so that the polygons are a little bit more evenly sized. But like I said, we are able to put a pretty heavy subdivision on here, and that is just working pretty well. So if we change our view here, it's gonna be a pretty perfect sphere, and we can always subdivide it more if we need to. And wherever this is pivoting from, you're going to see that we're going to be able to get this transition going like that. Now, while that's fun, I think we're going to end up doing, we will definitely use a little bit of fall off here to make the transition into and out of the sphere a little bit more interesting. Also, we want to jump around to some different questions. So I'm going to try and keep in mind to do a quicker version of this. We won't spend too long. So why don't we immediately save this? So we're just going to make a nice number 1 here. We're going to say pyramid, mid to sphere, loop. Cool. All right. So we need to decide on how we want to animate this thing. Now, I do like the way it was rocking back and forth. So I think that might be a good place where I'd start. Let's just temporarily turn off the spherify because that can all come later. Let's go ahead and what we want to do is animate this. And I think we want to animate it from the corners here. So we can kind of have it rock back and forth and then maybe squash and then leap into the air and then land. And that will be our loop. So let's go ahead and here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a null because this null is going to give us a good pivot point. Now this null is at 0, 0, 0. So actually what I think I would like to do is move our entire pyramid up into the air. I'm going to type in 100. And because it's 200 tall, 100 should move it exactly where this null is. It's also 100 to one side and it should be 100 to the opposite side. So I'm going to copy and paste my null, hold down shift and move this over exactly 200. So you can see I have a null on one corner and a null on the other corner. So with this in mind, we actually have just built almost the beginnings of a little rig here. Now we could get really complicated if we want to, but let's try and keep it kind of simple. I'm going to make a floor object just so we can see it. And why don't we go ahead and make a color here just so we have something. This is going to pop out a little bit. Maybe we'll make a nice orange color. And why don't we turn on SSAO just to give us a little bit of shadow. So we've got our pyramid and I want this to animate. Now if we were going to keyframe this pyramid, it would be a big pain in the butt to have this pyramid rock back and forth as if it was kind of taking a step left and a step right if we're pivoting from this point. But if we take this null, I'm just going to go ahead and name this one left and we're going to hit up and hit right. I can grab this null and very easily tilt it to one side. And then we can animate it over here. And once we get to that perfect spot, I can grab the right one and animate that one. So that is how we can create some pivots here. So why don't we start out that way? So we are going to probably, let's go even a little bit cartoony here. So I'm going to put a bend deformer in here as well so we can get a little bit of like anticipation going. I'm thinking, let's just start recording some keyframes here. Let's go ahead and make sure that our strength is the correct direction. It is. Let's keep Y length. So at the time of 0, the strength should be 0. And then we're going to fast forward. Let's go and fast forward. I'm just going to guess at the time. All our timing is going to be weird until we kind of can do a really nice playback. But let's go ahead and tilt this one way. And all I want this one to do is tilt one direction a little bit. Let's just do like 20 degrees. So it's like a little bit of anticipation one direction. There's a good chance I'd want that to hold on the frame, but let's just go ahead and have it tilt over there. And then we're going to have it go and tilt back the other direction. And while it's tilting back the other direction, I think right about there, we're going to go and grab our leftmost our left null, sorry. And we're only going to control these on one axis. So I'm going to grab the B, and that's the only axis it should be recording on. Let's record there. And I'm going to grab our bend at the same time because I want to see all these keyframes. And then as that tilts over that side, I'm going to overshoot it by 5. And now let's go ahead back to this left one and tilt the entire thing back. So it's kind of like it's bending backward. I'm just going to make it 50 because it's a round number. Why not? And then we can grab our bend. And at this point, I think our bend would be zeroing out. But maybe it's even going further. We're not going to be able to tell this until we go further. I am going to tell it to record again at the same strength. And then we're going to fast forward another 10 frames. I'm going to tell it to counter bend the other way. And at this point, actually, honestly, I'm feeling like I should probably be back further because it's going to tilt forward and tilt back, and you see it's kind of pulling it back, and then it's going to lean forward. But when it's leaning forward, I think maybe at this point we want this left one, I don't know, maybe we just go, once again, skip 5 frames, and then we can tilt it back to 0. And then at the time of 0, right as it hits 0 is the time that our right one would begin recording. So I'm going to also record there. And let's jump forward 5 frames, and now let's tilt it back that way. I'm going to have it tilt even further. We might want to lessen it on the other side. But now let's see what we got. So it's going to tilt. You see it kind of tilts over. And this is where I was saying I'd probably want this to hang. So I'm going to actually grab all 3 of these keyframes. And let's grab that. Yeah, so we have the bend. So it's tilting over. It's like, okay, it does that. It's fine. So it tilts over, and that's fine. But I want it to kind of suspend itself there. It should hang out there for a little while. So I'm going to go and grab all of these and scoot them over 5 frames. And the only keyframe that exists right here is the bend deformer. So I'm just going to hold down Control as I drag it over. So now it's going to hold that position. Now we'll smooth that out later, but essentially it's going to hold that so we can get some anticipation going. And then we're going to let it tilt here, and you see as it's going, it's kind of being like, oh, force it back. And then it starts bending forward. Now, the question is, do we want it to start whipping forward? Do we let it tilt back, and it's like it's tilting, and then when it starts tipping backward, it's going to whip itself forward. And I think that indeed that is what we want to do. So right here, I'm going to grab the bend, and actually that's where the bend ends. I'm going to say, you know what? That one shouldn't start tilting over until over here. So I'm going to pull this that way. So give that a few frames. So now it's tilted backward, and it's going to start tilting forward. And as it starts tilting forward, now you can see it starts whipping itself forward. So it's going to try and tilt itself that way. And that's looking pretty good. And then I think the thought is it's going to, we'll have it rotate back because I kind of like this anticipation. So we can do a very similar thing. So essentially we want to get back to this state. So I think, well, no, I guess let's just do it manually. So it's going to tilt over. Essentially, we want to rewind back to this state. So I'm actually going to hold down. Here's a cool trick if you didn't know this. Hold down Alt as you drag your timeline, the current frame we're on, and it will make it so you're not refreshing your viewport. So I could say, whatever this is at 40, I want that to also be what happens at 50. So we're going back to this state. So I'm going to record the state of the left, the right, and the bend. So I'm going to record those. Actually, I shouldn't have done the bend one, but it's at 0, so I can ignore it. And we go to the object tab, and I also want to record that strength. So now what should happen is we're going to tilt backward, and then it's going to tilt right back to that state because we essentially returned to it. And we'll clean this up again, but now we want to get back to this state, but we're also going to have it leap into the air at this point. But this is the state that I want this to copy to now. So I'm going to hold down Alt, drag this way over to 60. And once again, let's record the bend because we want to capture that. And I want to grab the left and the right, and I want to capture those rotations. And we go back to the bend and delete out this rotation. It's not doing anything, but I just like it being clean. So what we should have seen is now we should get it to tilt backward, and then it's going to tilt forward and then lean over to that new position over there. So that's actually working pretty well. Back, and then it starts tilting forward. So now let's see. On the bend, you can see that it's tipping back. I like that. But then here, it's not bending forward until there. So I'm going to delete this in-between frame. Let's get rid of that. So now this should start transitioning almost right away. Boom. And it's going to start tilting over. And that's all looking pretty good. And maybe we should start timing this out now. So let's just hit play and see what we get. Okay, so it's working, but now you see our timings are all terrible. So that's what we need to clean up. So I'm going to, because we got really clean keyframes right now, I feel safe just selecting all of the animated properties. And now let's start timing it out. So let's see. And really we just play this by ear. Tilt over. So it's going to tilt over. We just got to keep looking at it. So it's going to tilt. And honestly, this should probably hold for longer. So I'm going to grab that, and let's let that hold for an additional 5 frames. Hup. And then it's going to tilt over. And in fact, even looking at that, it's going to tilt over. And I want the bend to anticipate even more. So let's go ahead and say, yeah, you're bending over, but I want you to stretch even more to anticipate. So it's kind of like it starts going even further and then whips itself. Okay, that already looks better. Whoop. And then, yeah, so we're tilting, and that looks good. We're tilting, and I like that slowdown, but I think it should have more time there. So once again, let's make sure we're grabbing everything with the keyframe. Hold down Shift so you can deselect your current selection. Drag a selection. Let's give ourselves another increment of 5 frames. Later, we might get more specific, but increments of 5 are working for me now. Tilt. So I like that tilt, but then I think we want to hold that even more. Now, something that could be pretty useful is... it's called a hold frame, where essentially you want it to hold a particular position. So because right now these keyframes right there are what we want, I'm actually just going to select that and drag a copy of them over again. And then let's go and give this more time to breathe. So I'm going to scoot all the other ones out 5 frames. So essentially nothing is changing in this time. Now you don't actually want nothing to change in that time. You want there to be a little anticipation, but you want most of the motion to happen during this movement. So a good trick here is I'm going to rewind this a couple of frames, like maybe right there, and I'm going to re-record the rotation, and I'm going to re-record our bend. And you see I'm recording these when they're a little bit weaker. So what I'm going to do is when I grab all of those, we can go and delete out that keyframe and then scoot this one forward again. So now this now that's the final position, but this is keyframe, so it's almost like a hold frame. So you're getting to this final position, you get that extra anticipation, and then it can whip itself on the other direction. So let's see how that's looking up to that point. Boom. Okay, so that's good. If we're only looking up to this point, like I like that anticipation, and then it's going to whip itself forward and then carry straight through. So this is kind of like one motion. So we've still got everything selected. Whatever the amount of time it takes to go from there to there should be the same time it takes to go from here to here. So let's give that another 5 frames and see if that feels better. Now it actually doesn't. I think we need to go faster. So what we're going to do is actually grab both of those. I'm going to scoot this forward a couple frames. Now we're no longer on a unit of 5, but I'm just going to pinch these in. These should be the same, approximately the same length between the two of them. And really, we're only looking at our animation up to about frame 60 now. So let's see, bends over, hoop, hoop. So, I don't know, let's see, what are we missing there? Hoop. Let's see. I guess it starts accelerating in pretty quickly. I mean, I kind of want to undo what I just did. I'm going to undo and put those back in. Let's see what happens if I give it more time. Maybe I was misreading it and I wanted more instead of less. Hard to know unless we just see it. Boom. No, see, okay, so I guess I just want to see that ease in a little bit more. So what I could do is go and record our frames here. Now it's getting a little annoying grabbing our right and our left and then our bend separately when I want to record something. So we're going to spend a split second and do something that I don't think I've ever really talked about too much. If I right click on this letter B and go to animation, I'm going to say add keyframe selection. Boop. And now that's been added to the keyframe selection. And now I'm going to go to our bend and we're going to go to the object tab, go to strength, right click animation, add to keyframe selection. Now I could be wrong here, but I think if we turn off position, scale, and we only leave on rotation and parameters, then if I were to select all 3 of those objects and just hit the record button, then I hope, yeah, you see that it only recorded on B and it also automatically recorded on strength. So now I can just hit the record button and only the things that I designated to be in the keyframe selection are going to be what's added. So now it's going to be really simple to just grab those 3 objects, hit record instead of keyframing every single one of them. Yeah, so we already kind of did what I wanted. So we want this to spend a little bit of time getting to that point, and then it can, after that point, really quickly get to the other positions. So that is going to take longer. So I'm going to grab this keyframe and give it some time, and then it's going to accelerate through there. Boom. And honestly, that I want it to be even more. So that, yeah, there we go. Now that feels better the way it's traveling through. And now that whips down, and I think we can take everything, and we're definitely going to need more keyframes. We're going to grab everything and scoot that way back because we want that speed carrying through. So now it's going to whip through, whip. And then in the same way of what we just did, we want to get another in-between frame. So I'm going to go maybe about, it's going to whip through there and then slow down at the end. So I'm going to go about here. Let's once again record. And now this can take a lot longer. That can slow itself down. And then this one, maybe scoot it over there. So let's see what we get. There we go. Do you see how we're getting that nice little arc through there? Whoop. Lots of anticipation, lots of kind of follow through on that. So let's take a look at all of that. Whoop. Whoop. Oh, look how much better that feels already. There's probably a couple little tweaks to do, but you can see where that's really getting some love there. Whoop. Whoop. Okay, so now we're getting to where the new animation is going to begin. So we need to follow through. That's looking pretty good. I like the way it's holding there. And then it's got to essentially do the exact same follow through. So we can go forward a few frames, capture it again, record those keyframes. That is going to take a while. So let's scoot everything back after this time. So it takes a while because it's anticipating. And then it's going to very quickly whip through here, whoop, and then it starts tilting the other side. Now that's all fine, and we might actually now we're going to introduce another sort of deformer, and I'm not entirely sure which one we will use. Probably just some basic squash and stretch, if not a FFD. So let's give this a quick save. Oop, 1B. Okay, so yeah, but here it's going to be like leaping in the air as well. So it tilts back, and then I want to get some squash and stretch. So we can try. I don't use the squash and stretch deformer terribly often, to tell you the truth. So let's just go to a keyframe where we're flying on the ground. Squash and stretch, and I want it to go before the bend deformer. So we just put it inside. Is there a fit the parent on it? There is fit the parent. Let's start out by saying factor. So, okay, now we can pull this and you see it bends out, bends up. So that's all good. The center, I'm going to move down to negative 100 because that's where I want the center point to be. And now if we say factor, is it bending from the ground level? Is that bottom, maybe it needs to be down further? No. I mean, it seems correct. I don't want any curvature. That's where it seems to start or end, but it's not where it pivots from. Factor 0. Expand. Yeah, I'm not perfectly familiar with all these settings, but you'll see that as I stretch it, it's pivoting, but it's pivoting from the center point. So I'm going to try moving that down 100 units, and we might have to make the center go to 0 and then this upper part go to 100. So now it's stretched differently. So now hopefully if I stretch this and squash it, yeah, there we go. Okay, so that was what I was missing. So now we can control the squash and stretch of this thing just by grabbing the factor, because I told it to pivot from the bottom. So now this is the only variable that we're worried about. So we can go ahead and put that to 100. So we're at the default. I'm also going to right click on the factor and say animation, add keyframe to selection, add keyframe selection, so that will now be recorded. So if I grab our bend deformer, then we can now see that, and actually I guess we should grab everything because then we can see all the keyframes happening. So now as this bend, I think actually, so when we're here, oh, that's where the anticipation starts, but I'm going to actually go back to frame, yeah, I think I'm fine with that. I'm going to go to 75, and that's going to be the first frame where this is recorded. So at 75, it's going to look like that. And now let's go and scrub here. Now at 45, actually, yeah, well, then it's going to start stretching, I guess, or we're going to squash. That's where we're stretching, and then we squash. So here, we also have to record. So that's where we record 0. Apologies. Right there, we're going to go 1 frame forward. And now, let me start that sentence one more time. We're going to go one keyframe earlier, so that now when we go forward and we're in this position, we can start anticipating the squash. So that means we're going to stretch. So actually, now that I think about it, there is a problem here, because if I stretch, our pivot point changes. Not something I was thinking about. If we scoot this down, okay, cool, we can scoot it down. So that becomes an additional variable here. So we are going to stretch it to whatever amount we think looks good. And I'm not going to go crazy. Let's just do 125. But let's keep in mind that we need to also be keyframing where it's pivoting from. So I'm going to just scoot that back to 100. We might need to keyframe that. In fact, I almost guarantee we will, but we won't worry about that quite yet. So now you can see we're here, and now when it bends over, it's going to be like, and stretching. We might not be able to visually tell, but it is stretching further that way. So now when we get into this flat position is when it's going to be in its fullest compression. So right here is when we're at 0 rotation on both of our nulls. So now our squash and stretch is going to go way down. So we're going to squash way down. And this is as it was transitioning. So this is actually the tricky part, because unless we put 2 different squash and stretches, that would be weird. But it might make sense. It depends on how they're transitioning in. This is the problem with using that squash and stretch this way. I'm tempted to just, I like doing it with the formers instead of by scaling a null. That would be a little bit dangerous. But we could do one on one side. But then the reason I'm hesitating to do that, because as we transition out of 1, it would still have to be at 0 exactly at this time. And I'm a little worried about that. But let's give it a try. So we're going to squash that. We're going to put it back to its original state there. And then we're going to make a second squash and stretch. And this one is going to pivot from positive Z or positive X. And now we're on the O side. So this one, I'm going to delete out all of its keyframes in there because those shouldn't have been any kind of variable yet. And at this time right now is when I want it squashed down, and that's my main problem. But let's go ahead and, yeah, if we were to keyframe this squash down, we still need to go to the previous frame, whatever that is here, and have it be at 0. So that one should be at 100, so that's nothing. And now we go here, and now we can transition into a squashed state. But you'll see it's stretching it out in the other direction. And here's where the problem is with just making 2 of them. Because as this is transitioning, you're going to see it's going to be passing right through the ground because it's transitioning when it's not in the correct position. So I mean, so we can use these potentially to stretch, but not the squash, and that might be fine. We might be able to fake it in some other ways as well. So really, that shouldn't be transitioning here. This should be there. So let's go ahead and delete that keyframe and move this one over. That was just that one squash. So now nothing's happening. It gets flat, and now it's ready to do something. So now this one could, as we move into the future, do things. So let's go ahead and let's see if we can squash that down. And it has to be pretty quick. So let's go ahead and squash. Oh, that's interesting. Am I not pivoting from the right spot? Oh, okay. It is. The perspective may look like it was stretching below the ground, but it's not. So we can see it squashing, but not in the way I want it to. Well, let me think a little bit here. So if we go here, we could pull it below. I mean, it's tilting. We could take it out of the null entirely. So another option we have I wasn't even thinking about. I don't know if this would work, but we could put a new null and then put all of these into the null, and now the squash is still going to work on everything, but outside of the hierarchy. So it's got nothing to do with this rotation. So as this is coming down, I could say, you know what? I want you to be squashed, and it's going to still stretch and potentially pierce through the floor. Does it? I don't know. Oh, it's keyframes, so I have to get rid of those keyframes. Go away keyframes, and now squash. So now you see that's always squash, and now you see as it bends, and actually that is working. You see that this is going to squash. It's outside of the hierarchy, so that bends and it's coming back. So we're getting all sorts of funky deformations here. But I think for the transition I'm kind of hoping to get, this is actually going to work pretty well. So we need to see where some of the other ones are animating. So let's see. Over here, that's a stretch point, so it shouldn't be stretched at all. I'm thinking right around here is where our factor should be 100, so it's not doing anything. And now, as it transitions into that, right here, it should be at maximum squash. So we're going to squish it down. And I don't want to go too far, just a little bit to create some anticipation. Let's see. Well, I mean, it does kind of slide along the ground there. It doesn't pierce through the ground, but it does slide along the ground. And it's going to start tilting the other direction. It's also outside of the bend, so you can see there's a frame where it's kind of escaping there. Yeah, I don't want to get stumped on this. We could spend a lot of time on just the squash and stretch, and it's dramatically slowing us down. I like that little stretching, but trying to get the squashing is not helping too much. So I'm going to just keep the stretch going, and we're going to ignore the squash for now. So we're going to just deal with it stretching, so that can hit, and then so it's stretched really nicely there, and then here we can potentially stretch. But really what we want to do is start this tilting, and then we're going to begin an actual jump through the air. And that's going to mostly involve keyframing our left coordinate, I think, unless we take over on the actual pyramid and we let that start becoming its own thing. These can get a little bit weird. Because, yeah, once it goes off there, I think I would want it to go from its center of gravity. So we're just going to eyeball this. Building the rig slightly differently might be advisable at this point, but we're just going to plow on forward. So right here, I think we're fine doing that. And then once it gets here, I want it to quite sharply reach its end rotation and its end side here. And then honestly, what would be best if that then transitioned back again, and then we could keep keyframing forward. But we're going to have to fight against those two. Lasered is saying there wouldn't be too much downforce. I agree. If this was real, if it was real, there's not much downforce. But what I was trying to do is anticipation. The block itself is squishing down to prepare for a big jump, so it's more of an agency in it. So what I'm thinking is if we do that, and then we do just a snap? It could be a good idea to do a snap where what I'm thinking is I'm going to copy and paste out this a copy of the pyramid here, and I'm going to grab our left pivot point here, and let's zero it out. So now it's going to immediately pop down to the 0 position. But I'm doing that because I want our pyramid to now take over the rotation and position. So I'm actually going to now add in the X, Y, and B into our animation keyframe selection. And now what I want to do is have it counter the rotation and essentially get right back to the same position. Now, it wouldn't literally be the same position because it should be the next frame, but we'll figure that out in a minute. So I'm going to hit R for rotate and E for move, just kind of jump in between. Don't need to match perfectly. I'm just going to kind of match it right there. That's working for me. So now we just can hit record, and now those are recorded. Looks like, I turn on position now. Hit record there. So that is now the initial state for that. I guess I probably should have, the frame before, made sure to record those all at their zeroed out position. So let's do that. And it's probably supposed to be up 100. Unless this is also 100. Yeah, there we go. So that should have been the state with the previous frame. So now you can see that it's going to tilt. Pop. Pop. Okay, what am I missing there? The left. Oh, it looks like I should have moved that one frame forward. Don't lose the thread. The left is not tilting over until it suddenly pops over. But that is what the pyramid is doing. So that means right now, this should have had its rotation of negative, or whatever rotation this is. There we go. I just lost that keyframe. So I should have recorded that and then gone one frame forward and then done the zeroed out one. There. So now you'll see that this null is actually popping from one position to the next, but now it's giving us a zeroed out rotation base in order to continue our animation. So we're just going to carry on. Hopefully everybody followed that. So that's going to go there, and then now we can jump forward to the point where I think I want to take this and say, let's spin this around. Well, actually, a straightforward way of doing it would be to spin it around 360 or whatever is 0. So let's say negative 360. And let's give it the proper height of 100 and move it to its final position. And we can even make a nice even, let's say 300 units. We'll make it very precise, 300 units over, and record this state. So what's happened is from here to here, it's going to go floop over to its final position. And that's obviously happening way too quick, so we can give it more of a transition. But now we can go to the midpoint and determine how it's doing, how it's getting to this position. So what I would do here is grab this and move it like way up into the air. So now we can record this new mid position, and we can get an arc traveling. So it's going to look ridiculous right now, but I think we can hide this one as well. So now it's going to jump and then land in a new final position. So once again, a useful thing to do is, you saw I just scooted across, and now we can worry about the midpoint. So now we get this arc that we need to worry about. Keyframe wise, so we're going to travel up, and it should kind of harshly end at the end, land at the end. And we want the end state, like so after this, we want it to look exactly like it looked at the very beginning right here, which is a nice flat pyramid. So let's go ahead and do that. So that would end there, and now we can give it a few frames to settle, and now we're going to make sure that our bend, which hasn't been keyframed in a while, we'll be changing it a bunch, but let's just go ahead and zero that out and record, and then our left and right, we'll just go ahead and give them their keyframe. Record those. We're getting. It's interesting why the position was keyframe there. I'm not sure why. We'll check that in a minute. But let's see. So that's all traveling over, and then you'll see that we'll end up in our final position. I am good with all of that, except you'll see that I moved this to 120, so I'm going to scoot that. Oh, wait, we're giving extra frames to transition there, so that makes sense. So we land, boom, and now we'd have it land, and when it lands, I think we'd want our bend. Now let's just start adding more keyframes. Our bend is going to follow through on that animation, and then it will be able to settle in its final position. In fact, we will overshoot. So like even here, we could take this, move it 5 frames forward. Right here, we'll let this bend go the opposite direction a little bit. Yep. Record that. So now as it's getting that final like bounce, it'll like have a little time to settle in. We'll clean all that up, timing wise especially. And then even here, I feel like we land before we transition backward. So I'm going to scoot that forward, and then boom, we land. And when we land, we might even want this bent this way. So now we're going to fly forward, it's going to land and then spring into its final position. So you see what I'm going for there. Boom. That might be a little extreme. Let's go ahead and drop that. 50's been treating us right. I'm going to go a little less than that. Let's say 40. Boom. So now it needs to do that transition through. And actually, it is doing a pretty good job of it. So it's twirling. Although it's making me feel like it should, like at this midpoint, it's already doing the twirl. So let's go ahead and say, okay, you're twirling. So engage on that shape there. So we'll give it a bunch of bend. So that can be, whoa. It's pretty good. Hup. Now let's go ahead and just keep going back and forth. Now I'm looking at this arc that we have. It's not bad, but it's not perfect. I think I can just click and drag this. I'm going to move into a slightly better position right around there. And then we haven't gotten into our F curves at all yet because it's just not something I've been worried about. But this arc is definitely something that we would need to deal with, and especially on the X transition here. So I'm going to right click on the X and say animation show F curve. So here's our crazy F curves. But really it's just this arc right here I'm worried about. So that's a transition. So I really just want to increase these handles. And okay, that's going to pinch that in. Is it just, do I really just want to change it on X? It's quite flat. Yeah, that is X. So it's just doing this transition. Oh yeah, actually that makes sense. Yeah. It's only Y we want to change. So yeah, we can change Y. And there we go. As I change the Y to be wider, we're widening out this arc. And that's why I want a cleaner arc. And in fact, see right here, this is an anticipated landing. But we don't want that. We want this to be a very rough landing. It should hit hard. And then here, these should be pretty much straight. And it should be the same thing when it's transitioning in, but we'll leave that for now. But you see, we get this nice, clean arc. So let's see how that looks. Boom. Okay, actually, it's pretty dang good. I'm fairly pleased with that. Now, the only thing that's bugging me is this bend is definitely not what I want. I think I do want the bend to be straight in this midpoint, at least right here. So let's worry about that. Grab the bend. Where's the nearest keyframe? So there it is still following through in its jump, so that's fine. And then here it's starting, and then here it's in its final position. So yeah, we can very clearly go right around here, steal this keyframe because it's the closest one, give it a value of 0, which should just update it. So now we're going to jump, turn the triangle, and land. There we go. That's what I was looking for. Hup, ba-doom. And we got a nice little overlap, get some wiggle. That is awesome. Let's go ahead and take a look at the whole thing. Give it a quick save. Hit play. Herp, herp, boom. Nice. I am actually pretty pleased with that overall. So let's just go ahead and do a little bit of the timing here, and then we will wrap this one up, and then just give it a little environment so it can be hopping and looking like it's looping. And that will do it. So what do we need to time out here? Well, this transition is already looking good. So it's really how much time are we spending in the air? I like this anticipation. Hoop! That twirl is great. It's landing a little slow, like right here. Boom. I want that to happen quicker. Boom. So let's grab everything involved, which is going to be pretty much just the bend and the pyramid, because the other ones are not doing anything. Boom. And actually, I guess what I would like to have seen is right. Where does it land? It lands there. Here, we could actually add in some more tilt from our left one, but we don't have the left one. So this is crazy, but this is not unusual. What we're going to do is create another new null. And we're going to name this one left. So it's the leftmost one. And we're going to put it over here, and I'm going to move it to, actually it's the right one, but I'm just going to keep calling it left because that's the only one we're going to do. And now we can put this entire thing into that. So now, because that one's all zeroed out and these are not keyframed positionally, I don't think that's going to break anything. Yeah, all that is still working fine, but now we got a new null. But this new null, we can now add some keyframes in. So right as this is beginning to get to its final position, we can give it some rotation. So let's go ahead and add a keyframe selection. I'm not sure if that's still relevant, but let's find out exactly when we're landing, which is right there. So this is when we'd want some tilt on it. So this is maybe a little dangerous. We might break things. I might get rid of it. But what I'd really love to do is get that same kind of pivot going. So if we record that, and now it's going to look weird here. Yeah, but so we need to find the good place where we can transition into that so we can get that rough landing. So really, that's where it's there. So right around here maybe is when this left should begin its transition in. So that goes back down to 0. So this might look weird there. Yeah, this is going to be the problem. And this is where it might not work because we get that transition. I'd really love, instead of it just landing at its feet, for it to pivot and land at its feet. Easier said than done. So let's see. We can try and make the transition happen quicker. Yeah, it's a transition between the two. I totally get why it's happening. The fix is not immediately coming to mind. So it's making me want to just say, okay, undo that. Like, don't worry about that. We're just going to pull that null back out again. It would be cool, but it's just going to add a little bit more complexity than we're going to have time for here. So as it is, we kind of do get this nice little plump landing. I would love to get this little rocking motion again because that was kind of such a big part of the opening. We could totally do it, but it's just going to take too long. In the same way we did that, really, this big transition from one step to another, so it could suddenly be flying through the air, we'd have to do the equivalent on the other side, and I don't want to build another one of those in because it's going to take a while. So we're just going to let this thing land really hard. So right here, this frame indeed. So we can go ahead to our F-curves again, show F-curves, and we do see this ending here. So we've got all 3 of those, and I just want to make sure that, yeah, that is landing pretty hard, and that's landing hard. It doesn't feel like it's that hard. This rotation might be the least hard of all of them. So yeah, if we pull up a little bit, you can see what's happening there. Now we kind of don't want to smooth that out, and that's just the bend, isn't it? Yeah, so we can have that be a little bit rough, like that. Let's see. Boom. There's a certain lack of weight right there. I really want it to be like boom. So I mean, we could probably fake it a little bit, like to have the last couple frames like right there. We can grab our pyramid and our stretch and kind of record everything. Boom. And then compress its time so it can spend more time in the air. And then once it finally lands, it really gets a big like thump. Boom. So that's too much, but let's see, doing the one frame. Yeah, a little bit more of a boom, like it lands a little harder. And then we get our nice little wiggle at the end. We can taper that off in our F-curves. Let's see what we got here. You know what? I'm pretty happy with that for what we were working with. Let's take a look at the overall timing here. I'm going to hide our squashes and stretches just so that we get rid of that distraction. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. I like it. The only thing is the overall jump. I think that could be faster. So this, I'm going to grab everything that has a keyframe, scoot it forward. Let's try 1, 2, and then grab the second half of the jump, which is these. 1, 2. So now the jump should happen faster. Whoop, ba-dunk. Boom. And maybe it would be good to, like right here, do a little bit of squash and stretch. So we got this one that we never used. If I go and I center it over here, 300 I think is fine. So we could say that this was never used. I'm going to put it down to 100. It's at the bottom, so now it's going to land, and then we can give it a few frames And then it'll right around here, it'll be back to 100. So now we can go to a midpoint. And we can say squash down a little bit. Not too much, just a little something so we feel the hit a little bit more. Boom. Yeah, there we go. Hup. Hup. Oh yeah, I forgot we were supposed to we were supposed to morph into a sphere here, weren't we? I guess we might be able to morph in this mid jump. Like we can let's see. Why not? I mean, it kind of gets away from that little part of it, but we could right here we could say we're gonna see if this looks silly or not, and if it doesn't, then we can keep it. Otherwise, I think you guys see the point of what we were trying to do. And then here we are completely back to a not sphere, so that means right in the middle we're at maximum sphere. Let's see. Whoop. Yeah, it's not adding anything to it for me now. Like, we kind of moved away from that concept. I feel like you see the conceptual morphing to a sphere happened, and now we're just animating the pyramid. And I think that's the more fun aspect of this. So we're just going to ignore that element of it. I do like, there's like a little snappiness to that jump. Boom. Okay, so we're going to just do a little bit of F-curve cleanup. So we can go window, timeline, F-curves, and we get all of our different F-curves going. Now, the main ones I think we're going to want actually are our squash and stretch here at the end and our bend. That's where the follow-through is going to be. So you'll see that our squash is not happy. It's not doing anything until about here when it starts squashing. Now, what we could do is potentially, and this might not work, but I'm going to say that right around here, there's a new keyframe. And now when we go over here, let's see if we could have put a little bit of stretch in. Yeah, so we can do a little bit of stretch. So this is now an anticipation of the squash that's about to happen. So we can stretch that out actually a decent amount, I think. And let's see if that doesn't break. Yeah, so now you see it's stretching on the fall down, and that's actually that's really good. That's a positive thing. And I thought we were going too far, but like I feel like we want to go even farther. So now we're stretching to anticipate that landing, and now the squash feels better. Now I think I might want to elongate the unsquashing so we can stretch that out. You want nice even curves traveling through there. And then we're going to eventually level out, but once again, overlapping. If you want to go overboard, we could even put a little one down there. So you start getting a sequence of smaller, shallower like transitions. So keep in mind, we're only looking at the stretch here. Boing. And now you get that little bit of extra overlap. Now we want to pay attention to that positions, but I'm also going to bring in our bend deformer here. Our bend is down here. So we have to pay attention to these lines. Now we can see right here, let's see where that time is, right here, that this arc isn't quite matching. I think it would look a little bit better. Like, this is always an experiment, but it's like, can we stretch that up a little bit to clean up that curve? Now, I think our bend and our squash are fighting each other based on the order of operations that they're doing. The bend is coming after the squash and stretch. Let's make sure that we say unlimited. Oh, okay. Unlimited is not quite doing it for us. I think it's dangerous to switch the order here. And it's also it's this squash outside of the entire sequence that's causing trouble. I don't want to get stumped by that because I do like the squashing. And it's only going to look like that for this in-between frame. Like there's actually only one frame there that's really not liking it. So there's definitely some things to worry about there potentially. I don't want to get derailed on that specifically. There might be an order of operations we can fix. It's just where is the bend falling, and where is the squash and stretch falling. What would probably be better is letting that calculate after. Can I do it as simple as that? No, because it's not in the hierarchy. So okay, I think I know a way to fix this. So we need the squash and stretch in a particular place, and it doesn't move. I hit Alt-G, so it goes into a null, and I'm going to rename this null squash and stretch 1. So now the squash and stretch knows where it's supposed to go. I'm going to put it into the hierarchy after the bend. Well, that didn't change anything. I mean, it is the thing causing it, and it is in the proper position. Do we need it to happen first? No, it's breaking it either way. Square, fit to parent, fall off, smooth, curvature. There's no big or smoothing thing. If this is calculating after the bend, then why is it doing these patterns to us? Unless it's just not big enough. Because it's just the height and width. Do I need the top? Oh, okay, there we go. We just need the, okay, I'm going to undo a few times. I thought it was more of an order of operations problem, but I'm going to hit undo until we don't have that null anymore. It is just getting confused by where the top point of the scaling is, so I'm going to stretch that up big enough so that it actually can encapsulate the entire object, and that seems to fix it. Okay, that's fine. That is fine. Perfectly fine. Okay, so did I just lose my window? I did. Oh, dang it. I just put it too far down, and now Windows isn't letting me pop it back up again. Come back. Oh, no. What do we do now? I got... Damn you, Windows. How do I make that pop up if it doesn't want to pop up? It's on the wrong... It's below my screen, and I can't get it. I'm going to go to Startup Layout again. And put it back in, and let's go to F-curve. Yay, it popped. That forced it into the position again. Okay, anyway, back to our bend. Pretty much we just want to do some follow through here, and we can see where our squash and stretch is doing it, and our bend should probably do some pretty similar ones. I'm going to add in a little bit of softness right there. In fact, this bend, I'm going to get rid of that because it was a good reference, but we don't actually need it, and I can just stretch that handle over. So now it's a good idea to make the changes at the time you're seeing it so we can actually see what it's doing. So now it's going to be backwards and then land. Now right here, I think I actually want to break the tangent. And how do we do that? There. If I hold down shift, I can break this tangent. I want this to start like by landing. I want it to like whip through. I don't want it to spend a bunch of time easing in. It should very quickly get into that. In fact, if we wanted to go overboard, I hold down shift and go like that. And now we can go boom. And it just carries that motion through. And now that's going to bend down. And now right here should be the peak. So let's go ahead and scoot that over. Nice big bend. And then we can go and mimic what the squash and stretch is doing. So now we can overshoot the other direction, and then we can scoot this one over, and then we could bring another one a little bit lower than that. I mean, you could add as many of these in as you wanted to. Like that one could then go up a teeny little bit. And then, this one could have another little bump. It's snapping. I didn't know that snapped that much, but yeah, we could have that be a little bit more. And let's, why is it giving me these really hard tangents? Soft tangent, please. Soft tangents. That was weird. I mean, yeah, whatever. Okay, anyway, those are leveling out, and let's go and scale our viewport properly. There we go. So once again, and these two, I want these to be nice curves. So that one will flatten itself out. This one is going to be a very tiny bump, just that little bit of follow through emotion. And we got our bump happening here. Now this curve should really be pretty similar on one side of the curve and the other. So what that's making me think is because that's a little bit sharp, these should have been scooted back a couple of frames. Maybe. And those should overshoot. Yeah, that's pretty good. So, and then this one I feel like it should be a little softer. Yeah, that's fine. So let's see what that final little bit of overlap looks like. Do we finally get to our, yeah, we get, actually, I'm not sure if we are quite seeing enough of the key yet. We have to go a little further to see the final ones. So let's see. We go, whoop. Okay, I like almost everything. A little bit of timing stuff overall. Let's go to, where is the peak of our jump? Right here is kind of the halfway point. So I'd want to give that an extra frame. And then this is everything after that point. So I want to give that an extra frame. A little bit more time there. Whoop. But now having said that, what I want to do is have everything go faster. This whole thing should be faster. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and give this a save. And then I'm going to even save it now as a new version so we can continue forward. Because this is a little bit dangerous. I'm going to grab all of our keyframes, and we don't need this top reference anymore. Get rid of that. Let's go ahead, and we don't need that. grab all of these, and then this is real dangerous. I'm going to select all of my keyframes, and I'm just going to start compressing this entire thing. And I'm trying to pay attention because, okay, actually, it's actually showing in the viewport surprisingly well. See, I got my one real sharp keyframe right there, and that's when we do that harsh transition. And because those are two keyframes directly on top of each other, then if I scale it, then they might intersect each other, and then one will erase the other one out because we're quantizing as we scale. So I was making sure that that existed. So let's see if this could break various things, but it's also a nice cheap way of just speeding the entire thing up. So I think we just sped the whole thing up like 20%, and it's looking good. I like it being faster. Now you could always speed up in post, and we could also not worry about the keyframes and not quantize them. Having said all that, let's do it again. I'm gonna try compressing some more. So I'm going to go real extreme here. So now you can see everything's compressing quite a bit. It's very likely we break something. Yeah, and then those end wiggles and everything are sharp now. But if we were seeing a whole animation, like, there's no reason to be overly indulgent on this kind of stuff. Like, the quicker you can get it across, the better everything is. So honestly, we could go further on this. And I would really have loved some squash here. Now the squash is over here, so I think if we squish from here, yeah, it's going to stretch it way the heck out. We could put a second one right there and potentially squish it down. But we will stop these keyframes, and now let's just spend a few minutes on our environment. So we'll just call that good. Yep. And now really all we have to do is like kind of set up our perfect little scene here. So we don't use a floor. We're going to use this ground and hold down shift and move it down, and then hit copy and paste. And now we'll move this one over, I think 300 units. It might be 400. It's got to be 400. Yep. Yeah. So let's go and scoot that. Oops. Let's go and scoot that over another 100 units. Oops. I think I scaled it. Oh wait, that's squashing. So yeah, 400. So we've got those two, and now, yeah, we could, copy and paste that and go to 800. So now we have 800 over there. So now we got those shapes, but now we could make those whatever we wanted them to be. And we're going to see that's going to bend and leap, bink. And then the basic idea is that we've now got effectively what's a perfect loop. In fact, it'd be a bit cooler than these... Than these cubes. Why don't we make another pyramid? We'll put the pyramid in there and there and there. And let's zero those out. Shift C, PSR, reset those. And now we'll flip them to Y minus. And now we can pull those all out. And now we got 3 upside down pyramids. And then we could have some sort of, we can make a cube. We'll go, let's see, make it 10. And then we'll go minus 105. Oh, 205. And then we could stretch that way out. And that just becomes the basis. Now you go through and start making some fun patterns and whatnot. But now it's almost like we got this little thing balancing. And the basic idea is if we were to zoom in enough so we wouldn't see the repeating ones, then now we have our one shot, our one pattern that is ready to do its thing. Now really what we're focused on would be the middle one. But what's cool here is we've just got our null. This null is not keyframed or anything. So I'm pretty sure we could just, oh man, I didn't even think about it. But what we should totally do is we got our null and grab this pyramid and put that in there. And now if we take this and put it into a cloner, and now we clone over, not up, but over negative 400. Brink. Nope, we wanted that one. Get rid of that. So now we got that. So now we should have 3, but if we go and we give ourselves, let's say, 5 of them, if we go and we frame this up real nice, and I don't know if we want to see all 3 or what our perspective would be. If we, a lot of these end up being kind of isometric. But what's cool here is with the pattern we just did is we could make as many of these as we want and find a really nice camera angle So we could zoom way out and get a really extended, crazy camera angle. Or these tend to be, like I said, very flat. So we could pull way out or zoom out and then move in or move out, zoom in. There we go. So they end up being pretty flat. If we keep on making a couple more, dink, dink, enough with them, then the framing doesn't matter because we're instantly going to see an infinite loop of them. So we've got that. As long as we don't see where one, outside of the sequence here, we should be able to just hit play, and then they're all going to go, whoop. Oh, it looks like that. I'm going to put that into a null and move our pyramid up a level just so that it's not being affected by squash and stretch. And then the one thing I forgot is that we shouldn't see the first one, so we'd have to move over here and zoom in, or we just need to make more. 1, 2. So we got a couple more there. So as long as we're not seeing the first one, and then when you go and you make your loop, you only literally need to make a single jump, and then it's in an infinitely repeating pattern. So literally we would just record this like this, whoop, and then as soon as it stops, then it begins again. So we go here, it balances out, so we'll just call this 110 frames and find some good perspective. Honestly, I'm not super digging that one we just had. So we do this, and then maybe cut each of those off almost perfectly in half. And if we're going Instagram, we can go and make a square format here. So we go and picture it like this. Rewind. I'm going to frame it so we're perfectly chopping right through one when the other begins, or all but. And now we get the and yeah, now we got our perfect little cascade of these doing their thing. And this is literally only looping once, but we'll never see the seam. The crossfader is saying we should go full isometric, which is totally possible. Let's go to cameras, go to parallel. So now we're full isometric. It's not giving us a preview of our framing, which is a little odd. Does it not allow that? I mean, presumably we can just make our screen square, and that would be actually the final. And then I don't know how many of these we should see. 5 seems like a good number. There we go. Yep. Now that starts looking 2-dimensional, so what's the point of that? Let's go 3-dimensional. And I think it might be cool if they look like they're slightly jumping at us. Oh, there's like a weird perspective here where it looks like they're getting smaller as they go. Is that me, or is that just the trick of the perspective? But like automatically, it's kind of cool. Oh, and all right, I dig that. And then right now we've got that patterning going, but there's no reason that we couldn't put the cloner into a cloner. And now we'll push them up more. And then we get all of them. Of course, we need enough space so that they're not intersecting. But also we're parallel, so we could push them further back in Z. In fact, that might be kind of interesting if we were to... yeah, that's pretty cool. Bing, bing. I don't know, at a certain point it starts getting too far and too much, but trying to think of so oh man, look at that. Just doing some isometric like distance tricks here, but that could be it's a little bit of an optical illusion type thing. So yeah, I want to push that a little bit further. So we can't separate these out. We can't move them further. So this turns into we need the our camera perspective to kind of perfectly make one touch where the other begins. Yeah, like that. Let's pause it. Go here. Yeah, full isometric. Kind of get the lines all in parallel or close to it. We need one more of them there, so we can really fill in the whole screen. Full isometric, pretty much square. It's hard to tell if my viewport is or not. Yeah, that's not too bad. Although it is making me because while I like the squash and stretch, it when they kind of bulge out there, I kind of don't like it. I'm gonna turn it off temporarily. Let's see what it does. Herp. Yeah, it looks better without that squash and stretch, just because it was expanding beyond that frame. And I don't think I think it looks better without it, given the kind of the visual concept we've got going right here. So we got this nice full parallel. They all leap, go into the next one. Um, Although I will say that I do feel like we got to bite out that one frame again. So where are we at our jump peak? Right about there. Yeah, so I'm going to, once again, I know I'm going back and forth on this, but let's punch that up a little bit. There, just one frame out from each of those. One keyframe goes a long way. Here. Boom. Oh, it does really isn't sticking that landing. I want to really punch up that landing. Actually, it might even be happening because that keyframe shouldn't exist anymore. Potentially. Hup. That goes down, down, down. So if I were to grab all those and eat that frame out, boom, boom. Yep. Now I gotta be careful. Look, I missed one up there, so yeah, scoot our perspective back like that, and then let's get all of our keyframes. No, and man, we could just go and go and go. Like the stuff never really ends. If we were to grab this and spin them, let's see, does that make sense? Oh yeah, because they're all from one line. Da, 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 da. Okay, so what I actually want to do, I know this is messing stuff up, but we're getting some kind of cool looking at the end here, and we'll whip through a bunch of questions as we're done here. I'm going to change it to a grid array. I don't want white height, and we've got X is what we want, so Z should be 1. And now I'm going to say per step should be 400 units, and now we can make more of these. And now we got a bunch of those. But now I can grab my second cloner, and I can grab our per step spin, and I'm going to spin these here. And now if I tell it to spin 180 every step, then now you see it's actually alternating. And what that means is if we have our perspective correct, and if we center this up, might need to extend it by one more line. Let's see if it looks any good. Half of them are going to jump the other direction. Yeah, that looks cooler automatically. I like it more. Yeah, it's weird and funky and pretty fun. So essentially, I think we've hit all of the things I wanted to hit there. We didn't end up using our spherify. At any given point, we could have made it into a sphere, but I don't really think it's adding much to this one. That's so much more boring in this particular circumstance as a sphere. But we can go through and yeah, I might go through and make this into a final render so that it can be posted online. But yeah, I like us making these kind of final little animations here. I don't. I'm gonna keep going and say, should we? Do you guys want me to see me go and try and set up some render settings and a little bit of scene, or should we move on to another question? So sound off in the chat if you want to see it one way or the other. In the meantime, I'll just tweak the camera and stuff a little bit more here. Oh yeah, okay. If we scroll this down a little bit more, I like the there's even less space in the pattern, and now we need to. I mean, like yeah, it's good to see it in the viewport, but it's really easy to add on extra clones here. So I can just be like, oh, add another one, and now it's going to fill in the pattern even more. Let's see. Yeah, so everybody wants to see the final render completed, but we should move on to more questions now. So if I didn't hit your question, feel free to post it in the chat again, and we will save this one. Where it is, we'll just do one last little viewing of it and see what we get. Hey, yep. Boing. That is pretty cool looking. I wonder if we change this to a multi-instance, does it work properly? And oh yeah, man, it does because they're not offset and they're not changed. By changing this to a multi-instance, I suddenly got like 3 times the playback speed that we were getting. So now we're able to see this really accurately. Yep. And yeah, quite pleased with that one, everybody. I'm glad we saw it through to this point. Let's see. Crossfader's got a link. He tends to ask for tricky ones. Let's see what we've got here. Whoa. Oh, goodness. Okay, I like it. We're going to start this one off as a proper thing because I might clip it out. I like it. So I'm going to go ahead and pop this over here. And we're going to go here. And I'm going to say, hello, everybody. I am Chris Schmidt with Rocket Lasso. And we've got another question here in the live stream. And I just want to make sure we do a proper intro for it. So let's go jump on into our screen. And Crossfader had a link for us over to Instagram. And that is sending us over to this Instagram animation from Pasha Ho. And it is quite fun and trippy. I really like it. And I thought we could try and tackle it. So I think one of the main things to pay attention to here is that this is a rig. This is a bunch of different elements being cloned onto a surface. And let's see if we can figure something out along those lines. So here's the last one we were working on. Let's go ahead and restart our layout. And let's go ahead and save that and open up a new file and start tinkering around a little bit. So my thought here is if we were to make a cube and we want to try and do this pattern, and I don't want to make the exact same thing that they had in that one. So I'm thinking maybe we make instead of, I'm trying to think because there's some distinct differences. I was going to say let's make a wooden crate. But that wouldn't have the same thing. What's another shape? Chat, what is another shape that is like a shipping container? So I was thinking like a medieval wooden crate type of thing, or like in the Indiana Jones warehouse thing. But that's not quite, it doesn't quite have the same thing. In fact, nothing is jumping to mind that isn't a shipping container. And I don't want to just remake what they made, because it's pretty cool. Let's see. Somebody's saying an elevator door, an elevator, or even you know what would work? Just a building. Like the elevator made me think of it. But these are things that have to be very kind of gridded out, and you'll see kind of the patterning that is necessitating this. So let's work with a building. So here is my thought, and I wonder if they made. Like, I'm trying to think of how parametric we can make this, or do we need to make one rig and then make a bunch of copies of that rig? Because my basic thought here is it's the kind of thing where, how do we, okay, I'm actually going to use, you could do this via keyframing the size, but for us having an example, I'm going to use Grayscale Gorilla's signal tag. So this is a plugin from Grayscale Gorilla, and it's going to enable me, it's kind of like the vibrate tag, but for every parameter, and it's going to be really helpful here because what I want to do is animate seamlessly looping randomly the size. So it's a perfect example to do that. So I'm going to drop the size trio, this vector of properties on the signal, and now it's controlling it. Now I can go into the noise property, and in the noise property, I'm going to, also, by the way, anybody who's watching the stream, I'm the one who designed this tool, so I am quite fond of it. It's my favorite plugin. Anyway, just by going to the base tab and making a noise, so now I got this noise when I hit play, and I can see that this is randomly moving around. So this is already very similar to kind of the motion we were seeing in the other one. So I'm going to go ahead and crank our bias up and put our speed down. So you can see we're transitioning to all these different shapes. And in fact, you could do things like say, we're going to start out with a minimum of, let's say, 50, 50, 50 is the small size. And now I'm going to say that it can only go positive direction, and let's say up to 200, 200, 200. And right now it is not uniform, so it's actually stretching differently on every axis. So now we just get this nice movement kind of oscillating and wiggling around. So having done that, if we're making something like a building, the idea becomes essentially something like if we were to create an atom array and throw that in, you can see that this is stretching along. And I mean, even this is kind of showing the concept. You see these spheres on the corners are not changing size. They're constant. So instead of using an atom array, you can always do things like create a, let's make a cube, and then let's make a material. Apply that to the cube so we can see a little bit of a difference here. And I'm going to make a MoGraph cloner, put the cube in the cloner, clone onto an object. The object will be our animating cube. I'm going to tell it that I want to copy onto the edges. And on the edges, I'm going to say I want you to scale on the edge. I want to scale to 100% of the edge. I'm also going to, though, tell it to not align the clone. And now if I grab this cube and hit T for scale and start scaling it down, you're going to see that we've got a cube on every single one of these. I'm going to move it below so it's the correct order of operations. Now, okay, by turning off align clone, it's is what was breaking that. These are all rotated 45 degrees, so I'm going to see if I can, yeah, okay, we can. I'm just going to say, hey, rotate these 45 degrees, and now it fixes them. So you can see we have these constant cubes just adapting to the size of that shape. If I were to duplicate that entire cloner, and now instead of copying onto the edge, I'm going to say copy onto the vertex, and now don't be rotating 45 degrees, and don't align the clone. And then I can grab that, hit T for scale, and start scaling this up, and now you see I get these nice little boxes in the corner. So you see these are stretching and getting applied pretty much exactly the way that we want them to. Now this is a little bit more along, well, let's see if we can figure out, let me think, because there's a lot of different ways we could tackle it. Like right now, it's like, okay, we're cloning onto every one of those points. Now we could go into our reference cube and say, okay, we're going to give it a couple of points here, and now you're going to see we're going to get those subdivisions. So that's kind of cool. Like that makes sense. Like those are working that way, and they're stretching. But the different elements were behaving different ways in the animation. So you'd have to make the more specific rig, and then even potentially build some stuff up out of xpresso. Let me think. It's tricky because at a certain point it makes me think that you wouldn't design it as an entire cube. You would just create it as a flat plane. So this becomes our object. So we could drop this in and drive the width with signal, and then make a copy of it and drive the height with signal and give them different random seeds. So now those are getting animated around. The base size is going to have jumped back up. So let's jump that to, I forgot what the other one was. I think it was 50. So now we can copy these and clone onto the plane instead of the cube. And we should have something very similar. But now you see we just have this flat plane, which is working a little bit better. And because those aren't angles, that 45 is not needed. So here's where things get more complicated, but also more interesting. Would be let's do the example with a material actually. So if I were to make a material here, and let's do it really straightforward. I'm going to say I want a tiling material. What's a good tiling material? I'd probably just the tiles, which I can never find. Surfaces, tiles. There we go. Okay, so we just got these tiles. Really straightforward. Not much to them, but we could take this and we could apply it to our flat plane. And now they're going to be applied flat UV map. So now as this is animating, it's just going to squash and stretch them. But we saw in the reference that those were not getting squashed and stretched. They were constant. So if I change this to a flat projection, you see how they are not moving. Now on one level, this could automatically work. We'd be like, cool, done. But if we want this to match a little bit better, especially with what the reference was doing, is we would want to set these coordinates up in a certain spot. And we probably need to use xpresso for that. I don't want to get too, I don't know. This is a tricky one because if we with this type of technique, you put a lot of work up front, and then after you're done making it, then you can use it in a bunch of places. So that's a little bit of a challenge here. But what we're going to do is drag in our texture tag, and we need to be controlling in our texture tag. We need to be controlling the probably X position and the Y position are the two that we are worried about. So let's drag in X. Let's drag in Y. And now we need to drag in our plane. And what do we need out of our plane? Well, we need our width and our height. Now, I imagine we're going to have to do a little bit of math here. But if we did just take our width and put it on the X and put our height and put it on Y, let's see what we get. And that'll give us a baseline of what we should change to. Yeah, it's kind of doubling the effect. So I think we need to, as a start, inverse these. So I'm going to make a xpresso. I'm going to right click, say new node, xpresso, calculate math. You could just hit, I think, Shift C and pull up the nodes or do a search for them. I always just go through the menu, but I know where they are, so it's not too bad. But I'm going to put one there. I'm going to make a duplicate of this. And you see I'm just feeding the height into the add and the add into the Y. So I'm just kind of putting them into the middle here. And what I'm going to do here is grab both of those nodes simultaneously. I'm going to say, okay, you're not adding 0. You're multiplying -1. And you can now see what we've got going on. Doesn't quite seem to be what I thought it was. If I say multiply 1... at this point, I'm just going to start doing some guess and checks. Okay, now I just said multiply it by 0.5 because I know the material stuff tends to be half the amount of the object's width. It's just the thing. Now this is working the way I want to, and you'll see what I was aiming for is, do you see this upper right corner? This upper right corner is now locked onto that side. Everything else is updating and stretching. It's stretching on the bottom and stretching on the left. Now, if we wanted that to, I kind of want it to be on the left like the reference material, but at the same time, if it's a little bit different that way, I'm fine with it, where those are stretching from that direction. I'm also moving the xpresso tag to the right of these tags, so that's the proper order of operations. So yeah, now we've got that pattern stretching out, and it's automatically adapting to this plane, which is working well. And once again, if we were going for the shipping container look, then we could grab these and say, okay, I want to scale X and Y. Let's scale our Y really tall. And does it need to re-render? Yeah, we have to re-render. So now we've got less segments there, and you can see how it's like pushing in over there and it's stretching there. It's just a cool kind of offset that we could do. We also just set these to some vertical lines, pause it, and then changing the V. There we go. And now, now we've got the lines traveling vertically. So that's like the shipping container. That's how we would get that effect. If we translated that into a displacement map of some sort, or exactly. If we translate that to a displacement, then that would be matching exactly. Now, there was additional effects happening in it where like these individual corners were fancier, might be the way to say it. And it's, I gotta start naming these. This one is the vertex. And this one is the edge. So right now we're cloning onto the vertex here, but by cloning onto the vertex, we've actually eliminated some of the options to stretch or align these. Although in my head, I just actually had a way pop in that would make this work. This is gonna be funny, but I'm gonna copy our entire vertex map. Let's turn that one off, our vertex map cloner. Now we're gonna take this one and make it editable. These are our 4 different cubes. Now let's say we wanted some additional details here. I'm gonna make these editable, and this is, oh man, like this is gonna be weird, but really cool. I'm gonna grab that and that. You see, we've got 4 different objects, and I'm just selecting all of their polygons simultaneously. Let's say I want to hit I for inner extrude. Let's do in fact, we can do a couple things. Let's hit a D for extrude. Our extrude is more than 90, which is good. That's what I want. I'm gonna extrude those up more, and I'm gonna hit I for inner extrude, so we can do an inner extrude. I'm gonna make sure it's above 90, and now we can hit D for extrude and pull it back in again. And now I'm going to hit I for inner extrude, but in the inner extrude, I'm going to say don't preserve groups, and I'm going to pull those in. And I'm going to hit D for extrude and extrude those out. So you can see we get this really interesting kind of like techie techno frame going. I don't know if I'm going to end up going for buildings anymore. And just for fun, why don't we go grab these, that, 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 and that, and that, and that. Okay, so we got those. Now I got to hit D again, and we can do an inner extrude to a letter I for inner extrude again. Preserve the groups. Hit D for extrude, pull those out. You can see how you can like really quickly make something cool and techy and sci-fi. I for inner extrude again. Don't preserve the groups. Shrink them in individually. Hit the letter D for extrude. Do one little final in there, and we could and then we could go and go and go on these. But you see, we've made 4 different identical things very quickly simultaneously. So that's fun. I like doing that kind of thing. Making these sci-fi shapes is quite enjoyable. So now we've got this cool little shape. Why don't we go ahead and turn on SSAO just so we get a little depth in there. So we just made these 4 individual cubes all kind of doing the same thing. But in our copied vertex, our cloner vertex, if we delete that one cube out and feed these in, it's going to iterate through them. And because we made this one editable from the same one, we are now cloning each of those one time, which is just going to make them correspond to the points that they were originally on. So now we can get all that same motion and animation, and we didn't have to worry about like snapping them to their individual corners or anything like that. So now we got this cool little weird boxy thing. But these corners are working perfectly, exactly the way we would want them to. And that pattern is moving in a very, very similar way to what we were seeing in the reference. So honestly, the rest of it just goes to, I mean, we've kind of covered the concept here, and because I didn't think of something, I guess maybe we could make it like a TV screen or something. That might be fun. So we can go and, I'm going to reintroduce actually, let's make some triangles. And then we will go and put in red, green, blue. So we got our RGB going. So there's some RGB. I'm going to hit randomize color. It's going to randomly go in between every single one of them. We can make it fancier, but let's just go with that to do something quickly. Drop these down real tiny. Not that tiny. Editor. Let's do, does that work? Oh, wow, it does. I've never actually, on the patterning, I've never changed the way, changing the texture preview. So yeah, that's kind of a TV stained glass type of thing. So yeah, now we get this pattern going. If we hit play, then those will be moving around, but still stuck on that one corner. And I'm pretty sure we could animate the seed on those. Yeah, there's a seed. So if we wanted those kind of flickering around, there's another cool thing with signal. We're already using signal a little bit in here, so why not do it again? I'm going to put this into a null. Don't have to, but I'm just going to put the plane into a null, and then here I'm going to right-click and make a signal tag. And signal could also drive our random seed. So I can put that in, and I'm just going to say, on this, I'm going to say I want this to be a linear, in the base tab, I want this to linearly transition from 0 to, I don't know, 10 or whatever, whatever number matters. It's a random seed. And then I want it to be additive. So it's going to constantly add to the pattern. So that's going to be constantly updating. Now we're not going to be able to see that unless we're unless we're rendering. So let's go ahead and drop down the resolution there. Turn off the preview. Do all frames. And we haven't saved this yet, so we should probably do that. Let's make it number 2A and techno screen adapting. Okay, so if we send this out to the picture viewer, you're going to see that that there's like a static on these as they're moving around. But you still see it's still locked in the upper right corner. So, that's fun. Nothing particularly crazy. But yeah, so the entire screen's adapting and moving along with it. I like that. So I guess like the next, then what it turns into is adapting this to a more complicated scene. So let's just call this like our rig. I think it's kind of the basics of this are doing everything that this one's doing. You see that the edges are independent and these little lines are sliding just like our corners were. And you've got this infinitely scaling material that's locked onto one corner. Now, it's also happening on the sides and the top, so that is the element that we are sort of missing here. But we're only missing it to the extent that we now have a rig. This is now a rig, and we can go and create a null, and we can grab everything and put them all into that. So this goes back to us adopting or putting this onto a cube, really. So it's like we make a cube, and then we would go and animate it again, kind of with a signal tag. So I can steal that again and adapt the size and put these back to 50, 50, 50. So there we go. So now we've got this cube that's going to be jumping to all these different sizes. And now we have to tell the screen that you're not being driven by randomly being driven by signal. That's not what you're doing. What you're doing is it should be adapting to one of the polygons. Now, we do need to get the information from there, so it would be a little bit more xpresso. Well, we've already got an xpresso tag that's already driving the texture here, so we could just, I don't think this would take too long, actually, so let's go ahead and do it. I'm going to go ahead and rename this plain screen, and now we're going to drag in the screen, and what do we need to control? Well, I want to control the height. Actually, we already had the screen here, but that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. Let's not worry about that. I can still control it from here. Height and width and height. And then we can grab our cube and our height and width. Because of the current orientation of where this is, we can say that we want the height. So we want, height is Y. Width is X. So we can go and grab those. Width is X. Height is Y. Drive the Y. Drive the X. So now you can see, boom, that's exactly the scale. And then if we want to push it further, we can even go into our screen and we can say that your Z position, so the Z position, a completely different parameter, should be probably half, but I'm going to also bring in our size Z, which is just a third one, just dragged in a different way. Put that there, and now you're going to see it's going to pop out on this side, which is fine. But you see we need half the amount, so I'm going to steal this multiply. I'm going to hold down control so it duplicates. Let's drag that in. It's already set to multiply by 0.5. Do that. And boom, you can now see it's right there on the edge of that cube. So then what this ends up being is we would just make this a child of that cube and now copy and paste the entire rig and now go to the xpresso on that one. And now, so it looks identical, but I'm going to copy and paste there. Now in this multiply, I'm going to say multiply by -1. So you can see I've got a copy of the entire rig on the opposite side. And now we could go and copy and paste it again. We're going to do this a couple times. And now we're going to take this one and we're going to rotate it 90 degrees. Now it's still a child, and let's make sure we're in the xpresso tag of this new one. So what are we on? Z. So let's go ahead and name this screen Z. Because this one is screen, I guess they're rotated, so we got to click on the cube. So this is screen Z, and this is screen Z. This one is now screen X because of the way we spun it. So we need the height is still the height, but now the Z is the width, and the X is the offset on its relative Z. And now we can go and copy and paste that one again. So you see, once we did all that work on the initial thing, we have to make sure it's exactly what we want it to be. But now we can copy that in. Let's make sure we go into the xpresso of the new one. And now all we have to do is multiply this by positive. And now you see that we've got these four-sided ones. And now, obviously, we just have our last one. So we can go and copy and paste one last time. This will be screen Y. And then we're going to spin this 90 degrees. Or, I guess in this case, yeah, spin it up there. And now this one will just be a little bit tricky. Go into that xpresso, and I'm gonna hit play for a second so we can see it. I want to see it stretch a little non-uniformly. No, that's I'm gonna make a null for a second to pull the signal tag off of it, because I want to make this real extreme so we can very clearly, because this is the confusing one. I just want to make sure that we grab our cube and I'm going to stretch it way tall so we can very blatantly tell our axis. So you can see that, right now the xpresso is not set correctly, which we knew. But now we can know that the screen is moving. Actually, it's just this screen. So this screen is moving on Z. So we want that Z is still correct, but that should be being controlled by the Y height. Boom, now it's the correct height. And now it looks like the height is still correct. So it looks like our height is being controlled by Y, and that is still correct. That seems a little strange to me, but that might be right. But it looks like our width is supposed to be X. Nope, I did that wrong. Our width is supposed to be Z. Our height is supposed to perhaps be X. There we go. So now you see that those have adapted. I wasn't 100% of what those would be, but we had just guessed until it was correct. And then Y, copy and paste. And we already know that we probably just have to go to our multiply and make that one negative, and now it should jump down to the bottom. We can, unfortunately, I made these all a child of the cube directly. What I really should do is put the cube into a group, and now yank those out. Alt-G was the group. Yank those out, and now we can hide our cube, and now we just have our screens. Now, unfortunately, we did mess up our little corner patterns there, but I think it's going to be fine. So we've got this rig repeated 6 times, but if we go and we drag our signal tag back on here, then now we've essentially got the entire concept reapplied. It looks like we need to increase our minimum size here. And what's cool is all of this animation is being driven just by the signal tag. The signal tag, and all this doing is scaling our cube. You can just see in the cube's parameters, it's automatically changing X, Y, and Z. So you just keyframe those if you wanted to. But you see how we are moving those around. If we were to increase our bias even more, it's going to be spending more time towards the small side or the large side on any given angle. So yeah, you can see how that is automatically adapting to that size. Now, potentially there's things we could have done where you know, we're already seeing in the other one that they were kind of stacking up in a really nice way. So in theory, we could have put this into a cloner, and then we could have been referencing the actual scale of the polygons. But I don't think that would be, I don't know. It depends on what you're doing. I mean, I guess if we're making more than one of these, we need to stack them all properly. Because right now, it is looking at the mathematical size that's being output from the size X. So if we put a deformer in here, it's not going to adapt to that deformer. So we could build the rig a little bit differently to perhaps make that go, but we'd have to reference individual polygons and get their scales. Once again, you saw that even making this from scratch didn't take that long to put together. So spending the time to build the rig correctly and then being able to take these and then apply it in a bunch of different places would go a really long way. So I hope that makes sense. I hope that was essentially what you were looking for with this question. I think we have time to try and squeeze in one more quick one. So if I didn't grab your link, feel free to put it in for anybody who's still in the chat. Otherwise, I'll scroll back up and grab one of the older ones. I would have liked to have gotten the entire stack of blocks going where we could have like been cloning these or copying these. So if like I made a second one and moved it up and we had them individually doing different things, so they could be moving. Now these are moving identically, and that's kind of cool for itself. And then even, you know, keep in mind this is a signal, so we could go and copy and paste this again, move these over, and then if we grab all the these master signal tags, we could grab these and say just give them different random seeds. So I can just type in num times whatever, num times 11, and now all of them have different seeds, so they'll all be doing their own thing. So like already that's cool. It's not what we were seeing in the reference. The reference clearly had all of them in a somewhat uniform way, being able to move around, move and slide around. Although, you know, something just popped in my head that could be kind of fun. I don't even know if this would work too well. Yeah, okay, I got a real goofy idea here, everybody. Yeah, I'm excited. Okay, give me a second. So here's my thought. What if we trick that effect with dynamics? We already built the rig. So what I'm going to do, I talked about this a little bit at NAB, but if we make a floor, it is an impenetrable dynamic object. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to add a dynamics tag to the floor, and we're going to add a dynamics tag to the cube. We're going to make these a child of the cube again, so they actually move where the cube goes, but now we just have to make them visible. I don't like doing that, but it's fine for what we're doing here. So the simple point here is we don't need that anymore. So the one cube is here, and we could hit play. It should just fall to the floor. Oh, wait, I shouldn't have copied the tag because it made it dynamic off. I'm going to say dynamic on. And now that should fall to the floor. So cool. We've got it dynamically falling to the floor. Now you will see that. Why is it? Did it not fall? Oh wait, it did not fall to the floor. Give me a second. Right click. Cinema 4D. Simulation. Rigid body. Yeah. Okay, that's weird. Do you see how, didn't it seem like it fell to the floor? Boom. Yeah, it fell to the floor. Wait, did it fall to the floor and then it stopped calculating? So you see right here, if it had deactivation, I'm going to say don't deactivate. We'll double check and I'll explain this more if it does work. No, it's then starting to hover. Whoa, isn't that weird? It's stopping, yeah, it is stopping the simulation, but now I just told it not to stop. Laser just saying check the global settings. I thought by changing out the little one, it would stop it from removing it. We got reconstitute lifetime for resting contact. I'm not sure what that parameter does. There could be something here. Not there. Reconstitute lifetime. If you have a more, yeah, so you're saying reconstitution time. I put the 0. Oh, that didn't work. Let's try doing 100. And that didn't work. So a big number didn't work and a small number didn't work. So if you have a more specific thought on it, let me know. Because that's weird. Okay, well, it seems like I did what Laser thought would work and it didn't. So I am getting a little thrown off here. I'm curious if Signal might be breaking it. Just by the nature of it. So just for fun in Signal, I'm going to say convert to keyframes. And now it's converted Signal to keyframe. So the Signal is now no longer doing anything. I want to see if it still does the same thing. It does. Isn't that weird? Isn't that weird? I'd really like to get this working. Somebody's saying to change it to a moving mesh. That seems unrelated to me. I'll try because I'm completely stumped. But we can tell it to be a moving mesh. Well, it tilted, but it's still hovering after a certain point. There is no follow. There's nothing. We made that tag from scratch. In fact, I'm going to delete the floor. Oh, interesting. That's interesting. I'm going to put this back to being a box. So by getting rid of the floor, it's falling away. Was the floor creating a problem for us? Which is weird. Like, this is the floor have a slightly different property because I don't usually use the floor like that. So if we were to make a plane, I'm going to make it a collider body. And let's hit the ground and let's see if we hover off on that one. We are not. It's working on that one. That's really weird. All right, well, that's fine. It would work a little bit better with the floor, but the concept should still work here. So what my thought was, going back to where we were, is if we make a big old floor and we make a copy of the plane, and I'm going to make a floor in that direction, and then we'll make another one here in this direction. So we've got 3 corners effectively. And what I want to do is we've got gravity pushing down, and that's fine. But actually, just so we have visual control over it, I'm going to go into our dynamic settings, Control D, and let's get rid of gravity. And let's go and turn on some artificial gravity effectively. I'm going to say I want dynamics, particle forces, wind. So I got full strength wind, and this wind is blowing, boom, into that back wall. So with any luck, you'll see it push back into that back wall. Now what I'm going to say is this should be quite strong. So there's a pretty strong wind blowing into that back wall. I'm also going to say that the box and all of the floors that we created should all have no bounce and no friction. So they should be very smooth. So in addition to the wind blowing backward, I'm going to create a second wind. I'm going to tell this one to blow downward. And I'm going to create another wind. I'm going to tell it to blow. Hang on, I'm losing my orientations here. This one is going to blow backward into the wall. So essentially there's a wind blowing at each of the floors. So yeah, 3 different winds. So now essentially this should get pushed right back into the corner. So yeah, that's going to be stuck in the corner. And with zero friction, it should be kind of free to slide around, but it's being told constantly, hey, hang out in that corner. We could also give it pretty strong in the forces. I'm going to drain out a lot of its energy. So I'm going to say 99%. So it's constantly not wanting to bounce around. It's pulling all of its energy out. The entire point of doing that is now, hopefully, we can go and create. Oh, also, I want to clear the keyframes. And let's see if this still works with a raw signal, because it'll just be better if we can make those changes. Yeah, okay, the raw signal is working. Let's go ahead and give this a save on the new one. So if we were to copy and paste this cube and move it up into the air, and then let's copy and paste it again, move it up in the air, copy and paste it again, move it up in the air, and then we'll copy and paste all those and move them over. I don't want to go overboard because this will start going too slow for a live stream, but you can see that they all should move over. And now the dynamics are going to make it so they're all constantly packing themselves in properly. So all we have to do is grab our wind, and we'll try making it stronger. If we go too strong, we might start getting vibrations. And we're definitely getting some vibrations there. But I want to, as quick as they're moving is as quick as that would have to move effectively. But that's working pretty well. And so yeah, we're getting the jitter, but if these were not scaling as quickly, then I think that wouldn't be as much of a problem. So we could tell all the signal tags to slow down a little, cut that in half. And now, obviously what we need to do is randomize the seeds on these so they're all moving a little bit differently. So let's go into our seed and say num times whatever. Now each of them has a different random seed, and we're going to see some weird patterns here. I don't think it's going to fully emulate what we were seeing in the reference, but we should get some nice stacking boxes that are constantly reforming and refitting. Whoa, that was a weird one. I don't know why the cloner did that, but oh look, I mean, actually they could even change places in a way. This is I like this a lot. Oh yeah, look, they can form new patterns. That's really cool. So the I think we would want to hide those planes, so we just see like the final stacking of boxes. And there's one of the cloners is getting confused when it scales. I'm not sure why it suddenly shoots out. That's just the cloner. But I really love the way these are restacking each other. And constantly maintaining this orientation. I mean, I like them being able to rotate and everything. So the only thing that we're missing is they're intersecting each other. And we should be able to fix that by going into the boxes. And I'm going to turn on, I think it's a size increment. I'm going to put a big old one here, and we'll see what happens. Maybe it's not as big as I thought it was. Bigger? No. Okay, so we'll try a size increment, 55. Okay, that did seem to do it. Okay, so by putting some size increment in here, we're essentially telling the boxes they're a little bit bigger. And by just pushing it a far enough so that they don't quite intersect each other, and I'm not sure what that number is, 15 seems pretty good. Look at that little guy doing something weird out there. What are you doing out there? Don't stack them all up. And yeah, this them being able to rearrange and scale and go and do this is surprisingly fun. I want to put some more of them. We're getting reasonable playback, so let's go ahead and make one more stack of these. Copy paste, make that, and we'll go ahead and grab the random signal tags, num times 15. So once again, all of them unique. We could also chill out how far forward they push if that was a problem. Like we have direct control over each of them. But I like them tipping over and getting in their position. Now we could potentially stop that from happening, and I would like to figure out why these are deciding to explode out that way. Like those are just edges trying to get to the corner, so that doesn't make any sense why that's happening. But you saw how easy it was to copy and paste a whole bunch of these. Now, if I think Laser isn't liking the rotation. If you don't like the rotation, I'm pretty sure you could just go to your forces and give it a really strong rotational force here. So it's constantly trying to maintain their original rotation. And let's see. How far? Okay. There. When it was at 15, it wasn't enough to stop the pressure. So let's do that again. So you saw that one tips over. If I say, no, no, stay there, 55, it goes bloop and then fixed itself, which I thought was pretty good. So now it's maintaining their positional stuff and they're free to slide past each other. And I mean, potentially the rotate, we can push that. If you start pushing these too far, you can get to the point where they will start jittering, which is no good. But I am quite pleased. I am quite pleased with the overall effect. These are sliding around in some really fun, weird ways. Um, let's see, what is slowing us down? Well, honestly, those cloners are. I mean, those are cloners are bugging me, and they're not doing that much. So we could just go to our cloner edge, and here's something that's cool. We got a bunch of these, but if I search for cloner, oops. If I search for cloner, stop it, cloner edge. There we go. Now we got all of those, and I can just be like, turn all those off. There are a lot of them. So we can turn all those off, and now we don't have those little in betweens temporarily. But it should run faster because we'd have a lot less clones. So yeah, now we got these moving around. It's a pretty good frame rate. I'm gonna function remove repeating materials. We could grab all these. I think it'd look a little bit better if the tiles were bigger. So I'm going to make the global scale 55. Pause for a second so they can refresh. There we go. So yeah, those will be stacking each other better there. Honestly, if you wanted to, what is going to be making this go most slowly? I mean, we got the edges. Type in the word edge, we should grab all these. I wonder if just selecting and deleting all these would speed it up significantly. Not much, only by like a couple frames per refresh, but I'm fine getting rid of those. And I mean, we are running xpresso and signal on everything, so that could potentially slow things down. But ultimately, what I was going to say anyway was just I wanted to make more boxes, because why wouldn't you want more boxes? So this is going to slow things down significantly. But copy and paste again. Let's make let's stack them taller here. Once again, we need to randomize the seed. Once again, this is why signal's great. It's so quick to grab all those and be like, okay, random seed num times 8. And now we've got different random seeds on each of them. It's that simple. Our frame rate's going to be dropping down significantly, but we can now see all these boxes. We should hopefully see more kind of rearranging as they move themselves into new positions. And that's pretty cool. I like how that's, they're forcing each other up and moving and sliding into new positions. Personally, I did not mind the rotation. I kind of want to see what they're doing if we do allow the rotation again. That's even weird. Why did you see how these scaled up enough where they forced some of those bottom ones down? There's so many like weird little details here. And then all of the, like, stylistically, the way these move are all just going to be controlled by signal. So by grabbing these signal tags, if we like chill out the bias, but then tell them that they have the potential of getting bigger. So now they can all get way bigger. They might even intersect in the beginning, which is potentially bad. Yeah, some of them might end up more forward now, which could lead to some weirdness. I just had them too close to each other for that initial state. But yeah, you see they're instantly all interlocking again. Some of them escaped out behind our planes. Yeah, I like the bias, but I'm going to hit undo. But we could, anyway, my point is that our variation here is all dependent on the individual cube. So if I were to grab one of them, you can see X is the front back parameter. So by grabbing X and saying, you know what, there is no variation on X. Like, don't worry about X. So now this is a two-dimensional field of these, and they should all be very flat. So it's stylistically very different than if these were all a lot taller. And I would like to speed them up. So let's see. Yeah, speed them up so they can move around. Crank up the bias more. It's going to be more likely they can hit their different points. We can even say 75. Yeah, it's super fun. I really am digging. I'm really digging that follow rotation 99. Let's see if they're forced to stay straight. So yeah, a large collection of these, and then zooming way up, and then kind of seeing them the way they're framed out, I think would be really fun for filming, especially if you could, I mean, especially if you're keeping the width a certain height, we could actually make a second layer of these behind the first layer, and then those could be independently doing something different, so you could really fill in those gaps so there's more behind it. Yeah, I don't know. At this point, it's just like fully just playing around and seeing what you end up with. I don't mind there being some X height on there, so those can pop forward and slide around. And yeah, like even just stylistically, now that we are controlling all through signal and all through dynamics, like you just have control over it. Like, what is it going to look like? And it's going to look pretty funky. So yeah, once again, a fun one. I like that. Let's see, we are at 4:06. Let's give that a save. 4:06. I'm gonna check the chat. Let's see. Yeah, create a fixed outer frame to emphasize the complementary movement of it. Fixed within it. So like a permanent grid. Well, that would stop it. That would stop it with. If it's fixed, then there's not going to be any fun random movement, so that wouldn't do anything. Crossfader is saying that the original reference was made in Python, so I am proud that we were able to do so much of that not in Python. We were just building a simple xpresso rig. But yeah, once again, if you were able to like grab corners and get the orientations, and you could just let them random boxes do whatever the heck they want, and then you would be getting the final patterns. Yeah, it's kind of mesmerizing just seeing them do their own thing. And then you even saw how I was changing the dynamic settings here. If we, the linear dampening, we say 99.9, and now we're going to be draining a lot of the energy out from them, so they're going to move a lot smoother. So they're going to have less kind of bouncing and forcing each other away. The very strong rotation, we could even put 99.9% angular dampening, so they are less inclined to even want to rotate. If you go far enough, then these are not even going to want to move, and you need to increase the gravity. So there's kind of a push and pull there. You see how now it's more of a slide, where if we get rid of the linear dampening, they're going to be able to like slam quickly into their new position. So stylistically, you just have to decide which one of those that you want. And I'd love to put 10 times the amount of these all stacked up. That'd be really fun. I like it. Let's see. Flavlocks has another link. I think we're kind of out of time here. I will check the link, though. You never know. Oh, nice. Is this going to be another infinite animation? Oh, it is. Look at that. That's really fun. Honestly, a lot of these are, a lot of the techniques I would use to make this would be the same techniques that we did in making the bouncing pyramid, the jumping pyramid, because you would drive it via, like I would build it via a series of nulls. So it's like rotate a null, rotate a null, rotate a null. So it would be very, you would just be like put into a train of nulls and go ding, 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 offsetting them. Or I guess you can do like a chain of, how would you offset those? I would put a, I'm trying to think of a really easy way. I mean, I don't want to go and do a bunch of stuff here, but it would be kind of fun to really quickly do well, first of all, I didn't even look at who made that. Oh yeah, this isn't linking to anybody. I need to see who made this. Yeah, this is just an upload file, so I need to see the artist who made it. So we are not going to try and recreate that one unless we see more of the source material. But even if we did, I'm not sure if we would. But I'm fine talking about just how can we create a rolling box a little bit more. And I might use Signal again. Just because it's easy to offset, but we can also try it with keyframes. I just don't offset with keyframes very often. But I was thinking we could do this with a null, but I'm going to do it with a joint instead, just because we can see a little bit better. So I can create a joint here, and let's go ahead and make a child, And we'll grab both of those and make a child. Grab both of those, make a child. Grab both those, all of those. And you see I'm really quickly making a long chain here. And now it's really easy to grab all those and say the length of this is 200. Boom. And now we've got a chain of 200. My viewport has joints turned off, so let's turn those on. And now you see I've got a length of 200 joints. So if I wanted to, oh yeah, and somebody's saying there's a free plugin called Roll It, but we don't have that free plugin. So let's go ahead and the idea here would be just taking each of these joints and rotating them 90 degrees. So at the time of 0, they're all, I'm not sure what orientation is. I'm pretty sure it's going to be B. Nope, it's not B. It's P. I got it on a second try. That's rare. I'm going to record on P, and then we're going to give it, I don't know. Let's just give it 30 frames. And I'm going to rotate that 90 degrees. So we see when it's 90 degrees, we've got a perfect square. So let's make sure that is keyframed, and we're going to need a lot of frames here. So the basic idea here is if we can make these go off in sequence, then we could make a cube, and we can make the cube a child of the last one. And Shift-C, PSR, 0 that out. And now let's just make sure that we are moving it up. I'm going to move it up 100 units and over 100 units. Actually, I guess we can move it over there. It's probably more what it's doing. So the idea would be, now it's going to move up and it's going to zoom out of the screen. But if we can make each of these offset in time, then we can get something cool. So I'm going to go to the dope sheet. And now how can we make these all offset? Does anybody know how you offset it? Sphere Factory, I didn't forget to do the, thank you. I appreciate it. I didn't forget to do the intro because we're just doing like a really tiny thing here. And there wasn't an artist to give credit to. So what I would love to do is offset each of these. But I don't know if there's a way to do that. So if anybody knows that there's a simple way of offsetting these, because if we don't do it that way, then we're going to have to like grab this, pull it over, grab this, pull it over, and do that like 100 times. Don't want to do that. But anyway, now that I've shown you conceptually what we'd have to do, and if somebody has an offset, then we'll come back and try. But now we can use Signal again. I do love Signal. Signal plugin from Grayscale Gorilla. I'm going to add Signal on, and I'm going to say that it is controlling the letter P. It is going to do it, and we'll just say in a linear way. It's going to rotate it 90 degrees over the course of 30 frames, and it just does it once. And I'm going to right-click and say copy tag to children, and delete it off of the cube. Cool. So, and those should override all of the keyframes. So I'm going to just delete the keyframe out. It should be fine. But I think as I move this, you're going to see the exact same effect. You see how it's behaving exactly like we were seeing with the keyframes? But the difference now is with Signal, I can go in here and I can say I want to offset them. So I'm going to offset them by 30 frames times num. Num is their index. So the hope here is, okay, now you see it worked. It is offsetting them, but it offset them from the beginning instead of the end. So we just have to make the equation a little bit fancier. So instead of offsetting by, what is it? It's going to be, num is going to be their current number. Is it going to be like num times minus 1 times 30? I don't know. I'm going to select it. Do that. And now let's try again. Okay. It did work, but they're going into negative time. So we need to we have to push them forward. I don't know how far. So, in fact, I mean, we could, let's just see. I'm going to say negative 999. So now we're going backwards in time. And now if we rewind here, it is working, but you see it's taking almost, I was really close to my guess. It looks like it takes 930 frames. So we also needed on our equation to counter the negativeness, but now I can just say x plus 930. So now it's offset them all forward again. So now we should be able to go back to regular 0 time. And now time is 0. It's not rolled. And now you can see as I scrub through, each one is rolling in sequence. So now we get an awesome rolling cube. Now we get a cube perfectly going ka-tunk, 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 rolling along, taking too long at 30 frames. Yeah, but once again, it's Signal, so it's super fun to do things like, say, end time, half the length of time, offset x times 0.5. So I think I could have messed something up, but yeah, now it's twice as fast. So, you know, that's, once again, we're finding a lot of good uses for Signal. I'm going to divide that by 3 again, and then I'm going to say x times point. Actually, I guess I'll say x. No, I guess it would be 3.3 point. No, it's not 3. It's 0.3333. There we go. Ding, 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 ding. There we go. Now we get these rolling. And now if we go into our viewport and say, don't show the joints, now we just see a cube. Ding, 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 ding. And yeah, there we go. No, well, I guess we did use a plugin, but we didn't have to use a plugin. I just didn't have a good way of offsetting it in the timeline. And once again, if anybody knows in the dope sheet, if there was a way that we could have offset all of those keyframes in a cascade, so it's like boom, 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 in a line, then that would have been a way around doing it here with Signal. Ding, 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 ding. Signal just made it so I could type in the equation, and that's the only reason to use that in this particular circumstance. But yeah, that's pretty fun, where each cube is doing its own little thing. Or each joint does its own thing independently, but that translates to the cube rotating exactly the way we wanted it to. And you could go that forward and back. Yeah, but it seems like there is probably some existing plugin. In fact, somebody said there's a plugin called Roll It. So let's do a quick Google for that, and then we'll put that in the show notes too. Roll It plugin C4D. Oh yeah, I remember these guys. Have they been doing anything recently? Because Roll It, this was made back, this is more than 10 years old. It works with cubes. I remember the stuff they made though. Oh yeah, well they got, well, that's rolling like a, I don't know, actually it did look like it's rolling like a cube. Oh yeah, look at that. So yeah, pretty cool. Yeah, yeah, so a free plugin to go check out if you wanted to do it an alternative way. So, yeah, I think that's going to wrap it up. We even got a little bonus question in there. Let me give this one a quick save. And I think that will wrap this one up. Rolling cube. Let's see. Once again, I want to say thank you to everyone who comes and asks questions. A super quick shout out to the Patreon page. So right now, all the stuff is free. It goes out online for free for everybody to get access to and to see the videos. All of these episodes I put on YouTube for free in a week. Now, if you support on Rocket Lasso, then you're helping me spend this time to put this stuff out into the world. This also goes for all of my free tutorials that I have planned and working on. There's a really cool one that should come out in maybe about 2 weeks. And there are some tiers in here. So like if you support at like a $10 level, then there's a special bonus stream that's going to be happening tomorrow. It's going to be really fun. If you're interested, I highly suggest you get in now. And everybody is currently voting on what the project is we're going to be focusing on there. It's like a longer form project. And then if you support at like a $20 level, all the scene files I've been saving, you'll get all those scene files. And it just is, if you like the stuff I'm doing and you want to see more of this kind of thing, then it's really, really helpful. It's actually huge. So that should wrap this one up. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming in, hanging out, giving links, and helping in the chat, and just chatting back and forth. If you are not already on the Rocket Lasso Slack channel, you should totally jump on. I'm going to be fixing up the notes underneath the Twitch page so that there'll be links to a bunch of stuff. I only just did it before the live stream, but right now you can go to RocketLassoSlack.com, all one word. And then you'll be able to request to join into the official Slack channel. There's going to be some fun group projects going on in there soon, and it's a kind of first place to get news and information on how things are going. Let's see, is there anything else to mention? No, I think that should be it. The official website, because right now at the rocketlasso.com is a temporary page. The official one is getting worked on. It's starting to look pretty cool. I'm excited about that. Yeah, I think everything else is going really well. So one last thank you, everybody, and I am out of here. So I'm going to say goodbye for real. So goodbye, bye, 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 everybody. Bye, 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 bye. You can still hear me.